The first one I've already mentioned, and I want to elaborate and finish this, is about the Chinese modernity. The idea of Chinese modernity. You have to be culturally sovereign, to be economically and politically sovereign. And I see promising signs of that in China, that there's a recognition that traditional Chinese culture matters. So that I was enormously impressed with. And I thought, wow, this is really going to be something for not just for China, but for humanity. And again, the Chinese notion of universal is universal community. The Da Tong, there's an encouragement for other people to find their own modernity. So I find that really encouraging and important. Another one that I found, in fact, quite moving was this recognition. We had fought a tremendous battle against corruption. The General Secretary, the chairman, in his speech, in his report, not just the scale of that battle, but that the secret to keeping from the inevitable decline is the constant vigilance against that. And the understanding that when you rise, you can also fall, that things that, that come together go apart after a while. And right, this is absolutely central in Chinese notion, right? The Three Kingdoms, the saga of the Three Kingdoms begins with that. This sense that these accomplishments are not forever, that they are, if you don't watch out, this is what's going to happen. But there was a clear recognition of that. And the secret to keeping that at bay is this constant effort against corruption. I found that very, very encouraging. I saw this sense that, hey, as long as you keep that going, there is the internal strength to face what's coming at China, which is huge. China actually is a deeply modernized country. When I started going, even in the early 2000s and so on, in a certain way, because of its appropriation of Marxism, communism, there was a strong, from May 4th movement onwards, a strong modernist streak. And so a lot of the assumptions of the European Enlightenment from which these ideas come have entered Chinese culture, have entered contemporary Chinese culture. We are no longer the Chinese of, the imperial days. There's no going back to that. But frankly, prior to President Xi Jinping, it was really unclear which way Chinese modernization would go. Because if you leave it to Western theory, there is only one direction. It's their way or the highway. Modernization theory, which is sort of the underlying sort of paradigm for the social sciences, is absolutely unipolar and totalitarian. This notion of a Chinese modernity, it's a very, very powerful idea. And it is not like Western idea. It's not universal. It's not imperialist. Nobody says, you sort of South Americans or you Cubans or Malaysians, you have to follow Chinese modernization. In fact, you have to find your own path through this and it will come out differently. I think these are enormously significant. And, I feel China should persist with these. They are big slogans, and then these get filled in along the way by people, right? But these are real projects with real world consequences. I think China just needs to hold steady because these results take time to play out. But I sense a growing, in Southeast Asia, there's a growing sense that the Chinese, what they're talking about, they do, and we're seeing the fruits of it. I've worked on this ASEAN thing in China, ASEAN economic integration and financial integration as well. For example, with the China Development Bank at one point, I represented Malaysia, or the Malaysian bank. I was with the bank that represented Malaysian banks, and we worked on this framework. And things like the Belt and Road Initiative, people who work with China know that these ideas are not here today, gone tomorrow. And some of these ideas are generated at local level. And, And if they're good, they come up and they get put into a broader framework.